Good evening. I'd like to call to order this planning meeting for the town of Saugeen Shores and welcome everyone in the chambers this evening. Our first order of business is additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda, and I have a motion to that effect that's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, seconded by Councillor Rich, that the following amendments to the planning meeting agenda be approved. 1. Delete item 6.2.1, staff report, site plan control agreement for the Holiday Inn. And 2, add 7.2.1 bylaw 79-2018 site plan control agreement for the Holiday Inn. Any discussion on this motion? All in favor? And that's carried. The next item is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility. You can do so at any time. Nothing. Then the next item is adoption of minutes. It's been moved by Councillor Grace, seconded by Councillor Dave Mayette, that the Planning Committee minutes dated August 20th, 2018 are hereby approved as circulated. Are there any errors, omissions, or comments? All in favor? That's carried. So the next item is public meetings, and this evening we have one public meeting, and it is for zoning bylaws Z 42-18.46. It's for Barry's Construction for 775 Elgin Street. Our planner will give us a report, and then we will ask for comments from the committee and the public. So go ahead, Tessa.
Great, thank you. So I'll just try to be relatively brief, but give kind of an overview of the proposal and just the policies that are being considered. But this is just for information, so there's no recommendation at this point from the planning department. So just to situate everyone on the site, this is kind of a larger overview here. We got Arlington Street and Elgin Street, and then this is, that's the kind of closest intersection. We've got an aerial view of the property here. Now, just to note, the lot is vacant. This dwelling was demolished, so the lot is currently sitting vacant, and it is zoned R2. So the surrounding land uses are residential. There's also some light industrial uses over right in this area here, and open space. This is the cemetery right up here. And it is fully serviced and takes access off of Elgin Street. So the purpose of the application is to rezone the lot from R2 to R3 special in order to allow the construction of a townhouse on the subject lands. Now, I will note that at the end of last week, I did receive a slightly different update of this, which I can pass around, but all the amendments, basically all the special provisions are the same as what's being requested. There's just a slight change in the kind of design that was proposed for the two kind of middle interior units here. So the special provisions that are proposed for the R3 zone would allow for a reduced lot size and a reduced frontage for these two interior units. So overall, it generally meets the provisions of the R3 zone, but these two interior units would be undersized as per the R3 zoning and have a slightly reduced frontage. So just to give a little bit of specifics. The proposed lot size is 235 square meters. The required is 300. And the proposed frontage is 5.9 or 5.8 meters, and the required is 6. So it's a very slight reduction for the frontage. There's also, currently there may be a requirement for coverage, but as you know, we did just update the zoning bylaw and the housekeeping, which allowed for an increased coverage in the R3 and R4 zone, up to 50%. So that is still in the appeal period. It hasn't come into force and effect yet. So assuming it comes into force and effect, there will be no requirement for any special provisions for coverage in this case, but I've just included that note there just because we're still in the appeal period for the housekeeping. So just to provide a little bit of context in terms of the policies, in terms of the PPS provides direction on the long-term vitality of settlement areas and the efficient use of lands and resources. And it does encourage intensification in the built up areas where appropriate infrastructure and public service facilities exist. And that should be, and the PPS does promote this. So the proposed development is considered both infill and intensification. And it represents a compact form of development being serviced with municipal services. So generally, it does meet that provision of the PPS. In terms of archaeological assessment, cultural heritage, this lot was deemed to have low archaeological potential, so an assessment was not required. And in terms of natural heritage, the SVCA has identified natural heritage features on the property to include potentially significant wildlife habitat and potentially the habitat of endangered and threatened species, but they did not recommend the preparation of an EIS to address any issues of natural heritage, so there are no outstanding concerns. In terms of the county official plan, in terms of population and housing objectives, one housing objective includes ensuring a range of housing types as well as providing for intensification in existing urban areas. And then the section 4.4.1 for general housing policies in the county official plan also lay out some criteria for residential intensification, and this proposal does meet those criteria. In terms of the local official plan, the subject lands are designated residential, so the proposed use is permitted. Section 3.2 of the Saugeen Shores OP identify encouraging infilling and providing opportunities for redevelopment and intensification as an objective for settlement areas. And the OP also directs that new development should complement the positive elements of the existing built form. The town has established a minimum intensification target of 10%. The proposed development would be considered intensification. And section 3.3.5.2 also lays out a number of criteria for the evaluation of proposals for housing identification, which I've listed in the report and am happy to provide more details on if anybody would like. The proposal is considered medium density, and the maximum permitted density in the official plan for medium density is 40 units per gross hectare. This is under that at 37 units per gross hectare. And in considering new medium density residential development, section 3.4.2.3.1 of the OP establishes a number of criteria as well for evaluating those. In terms of the zoning, the subject property is currently zoned R2, and townhouses are not permitted in the R2 zone. So the applicant has proposed rezoning the subject property to from R2 to R3 to allow for the proposed development. As mentioned, the special provisions relate to lot area and lot frontage for those two interior units. And assuming that the housekeeping bylaw comes into force in effect, will not require any additional provisions for coverage of the lot. In the report, I state that the maximum coverage proposed was 48%, which is still under the 50% in the housekeeping, but in the updated site plan I received at the end of last week, it was down to 40% for those interior units, so well within what was proposed in the housekeeping. In terms of agency comments, town staff indicated that any issues, including the provision of services, may be addressed during the site plan process. They offered some comments in terms of infiltration and servicing. There was a letter provided from GM Blueplan with the application, kind of laying out the basics of the stormwater management, so that will be reviewed by the town and will continue to be developed through the site plan process as well. And also mentioned that if the lots are severed, as they are proposed to be along the common wall of all the townhomes, then the town will require 5% cash in lieu of parkland. In terms of the other agencies, there are no issues raised. So we did actually receive some public comments, and they've been included as an appendix to your report. So I'll address these more fully in the next report to council, and I'm sure we'll receive some more comments from the public today. So I'll kind of look at those comprehensively in the next report, but they have been included as an appendix, those that we did receive last week for your review. So this is an information report for the subject lands, so I'm happy to answer any questions. I believe the applicant is also here, can answer questions as well. And yep, and I'll be back at a future date with a recommendation.
Thank you, Tess. I guess just for clarity, I should have announced that this meeting, we won't be making a decision or a recommendation on this particular application this evening. It's just to entertain comments from the planner and the public. So with that, I'll ask anybody in the public, would you like to speak to this application? Just come to the mic and push the, I think it's a blue button, and state your name. There you go. Yep.
Okay, my name is Bob Hunter. I live at 802 Elgin Street. And I'm just a little confused about this whole zoning thing. When you talk about the fact that there's a requirement for 300 square meters and it's only 235 square meters for the 2 units inside, it doesn't meet the requirement for R3. It doesn't even meet the requirement for R4. R4 is 250 square meters. So I'm not really sure how, if we have a zoning bylaw that says it has to meet a certain criteria, why aren't we meeting that criteria? That's basically my only concern.
Thank you. Any other member of the public would like to speak to this application? Just, sir, go ahead.
About this, the lot coverage of, you need 48, needs 48, or it's, sorry. You're trying to do a housekeeping update so that it can cover 50% of the lot, right? And this is assuming that you're going to get this housekeeping agreement done. So we're working on what ifs and not what is. Like right now it's 35%. Or is that not how we should be doing things? Like working on what we have in place, not what may be in place?
Thank you.
Hello, Richard Kennedy. I live at 778 Elgin Street, the house right beside it, and I submitted a letter already to council outlining my main, I guess, points, but just generally, my main concern would be the traffic, as well as cost on the street. The house that was there belonged to just 2 residents, and it's known for a rather quiet street, and when I purchased the lot a year and a half ago, those were the amenities that I kind of looked for. And with this proposed 4 residential spots going in there, I'm kind of wondering what that will look like after. Not just to my property, but as well as all the houses in the neighborhood. But I do have to commend, though, Stuart from the construction company for doing a good job keeping me up to date throughout the summer on kind of what's been going on. So, yeah.
Thank you. Is there any other member who would like to speak to this? I'll ask one more time. Is there any other member from the public who would like to speak to this? Okay, then, does the committee need any clarification on the report? Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At one point in the report, it talks about the fact that the applicant has come to an agreement with the property owner to the east for installation of a fence. And so I was wondering if there was any discussion with or possibility of an agreement with the owner to the west.
I think we've got the applicant here. He can probably answer that.
Work. See, I did speak to Mr. Kennedy a few times. I did speak to the other neighbor as well, and I made the same offer to him. I haven't heard back from him. We'll probably still talk, and we're more than open to doing that as well for him.
Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I'm reading this right, if I'm understanding the process that we're involved in today is different than, say, the process we went through with 510 Market Street. So on the 510 Market Street application, our planning staff were already suggesting that it was okay to do what they wanted to do on 510 Market Street. But tonight you're not doing that. tonight you're waiting for, have I got the process right or wrong that you've changed the process here slightly? We're listening to public input.
Just for clarity, we followed the same process for Market Street, where we hold a public meeting and ask for comments from the public. Then we summarize all those comments, our staff do, and come back with a recommendation at hopefully the next planning meeting.
I believe there was a recommendation at this same step of the planning process, and I believe tonight there is not. So that to me is a change in our process. And I think it's a good change in the process, but that it behooves us as council to give input to staff right now as to whether or not we would support such a thing. And in the event that we don't, in the event that we feel that we cannot support this zoning request for change, then we should say so now, so that the staff go back and say, we've got a council that doesn't support this zoning change, so maybe we will look at it again and say, with a developer, maybe we should be doing this. You should be building 2 semi-detached units on an R2 zoned piece of property. Otherwise, I will ask the purpose of the planning process, the purpose of the zoning bylaw, and the purpose of all the other documents that go hand in hand with this. Because we're back where we were before, with simply a request to change a zone, and it gets granted, and you can build whatever you want. The neighbors in that area, by the way, I was in the mail-out distribution for this. I live that close to this property that I'm within the mail-out. And I received the mail-out, and I lived right there. And I can tell you that there are places in that area that clearly meet the ideals set out by the developer, and he's done a good job. This, again, is another instance where plenty of documentation we have speaks to why we shouldn't be doing it. So, and one of those is, does it meet the character of the surrounding residential lot area? And it doesn't. This clearly does not. So I'm at odds with myself, Mr. Mayor, and maybe with you and the rest of council, in that I'm thinking, you just throw your hands up and say, well, we lost 510 Market Street, so what's the point never saying anything again? And I won't do that. So what I will say right now is, I believe that my input back to our planning agents and the planning authority and to us as a committee is that this zoning request for change should be denied. And it should be denied because we should stand behind all of the documentation that says there are good reasons why you would construct this in an R3 zone. This isn't an R3 zone, and we should hold the line at that and say we will only permit R3 development in R3 zone.
I think you need to make those arguments after we've heard all of these comments and planners. The applicant and the people here are entitled to a fair due process before we make a decision. We hear all of this. You're perfectly welcome to make those arguments, whatever the recommendation comes back, and we don't know what it's going to be. We're speculating what it's going to be. So I think, like I say, those comments, we'll entertain those when we get a recommendation. Vice Deputy Mayor Hubert.
Thank you, and through you, perhaps to the planner or perhaps our own staff, the lot that's immediately to the west looks fairly skinny. I'm just curious to know what the width would be on that. It looks, when you look at the map and the mapping, and I'm looking at page 22 of 52 of the materials we received, you can see when you plan, it's about patterns, and so you can see definitely a pattern in the area, but this particular block that this is in, that one southerly part of it has obviously had some action on it already with some severances and some lot divisions. I'm just curious to know there's 2 fairly thin lots or skinny lots on that side. One is particularly adjacent to this property. Do we know what the widths of those properties are? And the reason why I ask is that I'm going to guess it's more than what these 4 would be when they got split, but that's already an undersized lot there in comparison to the rest of the area. So do you know what the width of that lot immediately to the west is?
Not off the top of my head, but I could have that in the next report.
That would be good, thank you.
If you want to speak to it, sure. Okay. Thank you. I think you can bring that. You can give us that information with the next report, Tessa. Is there any other clarification the committee would like? Oh, Deputy Mayor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Tess, I was just interested, back to the lot coverage discussion and the housekeeping amendment that has already been approved by us and is now waiting to get through the appeal period. And so, but that relates to R3 and R4 zones, not to R2 zones. And this is right now an R2 zone. So I just wondered, I think we need that bit of extra context since one of the elements of making a decision about this is scale and massing. Lot coverage is a pretty important component to deciding whether it meets those criteria. And all of the neighboring, just from that map, you can see basically every block past Arlington Street heading east is all R2. So what's permitted on those lots currently under their R2 zoning is really what you could accept as being the scale and massing permitted for, the neighboring properties, the local properties. And so I just wonder, what is permitted for lot coverage in an R2 zone? What would be allowed on these properties as they're currently zoned?
I have to double check. I think it's 35%, but it's a little bit. It's only for the interior. 45. Okay, 45% for those. I guess. So yeah, it would meet it. But I can provide a breakdown in the next report of kind of the entire building on the lot versus the 4 individual ones, right? Because when you look at the lot, because whether it's severed or not, I think like some of these special provisions wouldn't be required if this was just going to be a townhome with 4 rental units. But because they're going to be severed, it changes the distribution.
It's kind of, sorry, if I may, Mr. Mayor, it's kind of how you think about it. If you think about it as being one big building, and forgetting that it's split into 4, it's a building. And if you wanted to build a home, just a single-family residence on that lot as it is right now, with the same footprint as what is being proposed by the developer, what you're saying is you could do that. In an R2 zone, you could build that. You could build this, or the footprint that's being proposed, because you can have 45%, and what you have before you now is under 45%. Am I understanding that right?
I believe so. I did a brief overview, and I haven't broken it down totally, and I plan to do that for the next report. But it's my understanding that, yeah, you could build I think you could build a single or a semi on this property today with that exact same footprint as was being proposed. It's just because of those severances that the variances are.
It would be good if, just so we can have, for the next time you come back, if you can have a really clear answer to that question, that would be really great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further, Councillor Minaj.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm concerned that I won't be here for the next time this comes back as an application. So maybe I should be, not that I won't be here, but I won't be an elected official sitting in this chair. I don't know when these applications will return. So I'd like to say this. On 510 Market Street, we changed R1 to R2, and we built a semi-detached home. Now we're on R2 land, which really, the semi-detached homes that they're building on 510 Market Street should be what we're building on this lot on Elgin Street. And yet, here we are with the R2 zone set up the way the developer would like it, and it's not good enough. And now we need to put 4 homes on a single lot and change the zoning to R3. It's, to me, at some point, it's taking our documentation and it's saying it doesn't apply, it doesn't matter. So we should rewrite it. and we should change all of our. When are we going to apply? When are we only ever going to? The fool that comes forward and says, "I only want to build 2 houses on a lot because it's R2," we'll never hear from them again. Everybody should build 4 houses on a lot, because you can make twice the profit you can make off of 2 houses on a lot. So in my money estimation, I can see how that works. So I don't understand fundamentally, principally, how our zoning bylaw has any value if we don't uphold it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Well, thank you very much. Then, like I had mentioned, we've gathered the comments from the committee and the public, and our staff will come back with a recommendation at a future date. So the next item on the agenda then is item 6.2.2, correct? Yes. Thank you. And it's an information report on a site plan update for 251431 Ontario Incorporated, and I believe our Manager of Development Services, Jay, is going to present the report.
No presentation, just answer questions if there are any.
Any questions? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
I just had a question about, and unfortunately I don't remember the page reference, but it might be right up here at the beginning. There's a comment about the entire site plan, and it mentions about the potential to have a convenience store / gas bar on the site. I just wanted to ask, I thought when we went through the source water protection situation that we were creating very little opportunity, if any, for additional gas stations in Saugeen Shores. So does that apply here, or is this outside of that zone?
No, it's within a particular zone. It would be in the zone that requires, I think, tanks that are over 14,000 liters, I think, require, or under, I can't remember exactly whether it's above or below, they require a risk management plan. It doesn't preclude them from development. It just requires a risk management plan approved by us, the risk management official for the area. And so if that came forward as a permitting application, it would go to our consultant and provide advice as to how that should be integrated, and then that would form part of the approval.
Yeah, I bring that up because the last time we talked about a gas station, there was concern that we were at a saturation point for gas stations in Port Elgin. So I did want to ask, though, there's comments in here about always the surfacing, it being a hard surface, so it's asphalt, concrete, or other hard surfacing. It just seems like a very big parcel of land to pretty much be covering with hard surfaces. Is this not, just throw out the opportunity perhaps to consider putting some different kind of treatment on the ground somewhere there that gives an example of something other than concrete or asphalt that can be used as a surface treatment? Because it just seemed like a lot of concrete and a lot of asphalt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question actually is about the proposed bylaw. I don't know if it's appropriate to ask about that yet or not. It's been added? The wording? Okay.
Jet, sorry. Councillor Mayap.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mayor. My question was, my recollection serves me right, this was the subject of a tribunal hearing. Has that hearing taken place, and if so?
No, that was not this property. That was the Holiday Inn site. This is the daycare site.
This is the daycare
north
site.
of the independent grocer. Sorry, there happened to be just serendipity. They're very, very close.
Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
I had one more. I noticed on the drawing that the access, there's 2 accesses off the highway. Neither one of them seems to be this right in, right off kind of thing. So why is that significant at the south end of town, but we're not going after one of them this way? Like, is there some thing about highway construction that would encourage that or discourage that kind of access?
Nothing about the highway in particular, other than that this developer prepared a TIS, or a transportation impact study or traffic impact study, to assess the entrances, and was found that these are appropriate for that location.
Councillor Madison, will get him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Jay, so then if we have two entrance points, will we be extending a median lane for turning on the northbound lane?
No, I think there is, okay, I thought there was some painting redone, but in this location there was a median extension. I'll let Amanda talk, because this didn't come up the last time.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, it's not a concrete median, but they had to change the line painting for the common left turn lane through that piece, so the developer is responsible for redoing that.
So we'll have a left turn lane on the northbound lane, and immediately south of that we'll have a left turn lane coming into the plex here.
Yeah, it'll be a common left turn, so you will end up being able to go east or west out of that lane. It's, we would refer to it as a suicide lane, and
Gotcha.
you know what I mean.
Yeah,
So that will be common to concession.
I was just wondering if that was going to be extended down. How far will that be extended to?
It'll go from the current left turn lane onto Tomlinson up to the concession 10 left turn.
Right
lane.
to the 10th?
Yep.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I just wanted to clarify the process here, because we've already approved this site plan, right? I mean, the stuff we're debating is stuff we've already approved. What we're doing at this moment is just, I guess the reason why I wanted to ask a question is just to clarify exactly how you intend to proceed, because my understanding was that if there were revisions or changes, that the Director of Infrastructure had been delegated the authority to make changes. And I just wonder, what are your thresholds? What are you intending every time there are changes to bring an information report to council, or is there a certain type of change that's going to trigger an information report? The reason I ask is that it becomes difficult from a procedure standpoint for council, because council then ends up debating the site plan over and over and over again when we've delegated the authority or approved it initially. And I just wonder I expected the director to handle it, and I guess wonder what you're going to do.
So I guess the general thought is that because this would be the first opportunity for the director to exercise her authority, we felt it was appropriate to inform council up front. We would like to explore over time how often you'd like to be reported on, but given where we are in the election cycle, it wasn't. We just wanted to inform council what was going on.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, then we'll move on to the next item, which is 11.2.1 bylaw site plan, bylaw 79-2018 site plan control agreement for the Holiday Inn. And I have a motion that's been moved by Councillor Dave Mayette and seconded by Councillor Grace, that bylaw 79-2018 being a bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement with the Lord Elgin Estates Development Limited is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed the 17th day of December 2018, and that Council authorize the Director of Infrastructure and Development Services to approve subsequent site plans associated with the subject lands, provided the site plans are in general conformity with the overall site plan, the town's design guidelines, and compliant with the town's zoning bylaw. Questions, comments to the bylaw? Councillor Dave Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mayor, with regards to the tribunal hearing, is that necessary to be cleared out of the way before this bylaw gets passed? And if so, what were the results?
It's the appeal that was the subject has been withdrawn by the appellant, and the board acknowledged that receipt and has just closed the file. There is no more appeal. So that doesn't. If you want to pass the bylaw tonight, it can be passed tonight.
Councillor Grace.
Mr. Mayor. So my question is for number 3 on the proposed bylaw, and specifically the word general conformity. So I'm wondering why general is deemed necessary in there as opposed to just in conformity.
Well, I guess it was meant to be understood, at least it's a common phrase, general conformity, and sort of allows for some flexibility, recognizing market changes, nuances in, site-specific issues that come up from time to time, but allow for that flexibility to be built into the powers of the delegation. And conformity without that adjective would be maybe more difficult and more rigid in its application, which wasn't the intention. So likewise, with the previous file we discussed, general conformity with having a drive-through of a building, of a pad building like that, would allow for consideration, in my view, of the commercial, but appropriate, whereas conformity might not have allowed that flexibility, in my view.
So, in reading this, it appears to me that, are we talking about subsequent site plans for this particular plan, or are we talking about subsequent site plans?
Just for the
in
subject
general?
land, just for these subject lands, so just the highlighted area in red in the report.
Thank you.
Further questions? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Oh, that. Next item is adjournment, and it's been moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, seconded by Councillor Minaj, that this planning committee meeting of September the 17th, 2018, hereby adjourned at 7:08 p.m. All in favor? We're adjourned.